torch leaves the soldier's hand without ceremony. No prayer, no hesitation. It arcs once, ugly and practical, and shatters the stained glass of the hospital window. The fire catches immediately, climbing the dry beams like it's been waiting for permission. Inside, someone screams. Outside, no one looks back. You're standing in the street when the heat hits your face, close enough to feel your eyebrows tighten, far enough to know this building is already dead. Orders move faster than conscience. Burn it. Burn all of it. This is not an enemy act. This is Vienna killing its own body to keep its heart alive. The air fills with smoke so thick it collapses the afternoon into dusk. September sun gone. The vineyards on the hills ignite next, rows of grapes popping like fat in a pan. Estates follow. Wooden roofs, stables, chapels. Anything that might give cover to the army that is coming. You smell pitch, manure, wet earth, and fear layered together until they become indistinguishable. People cough and keep working. The choice has already been made for them. You understand the arithmetic even if you don't want to. 16,000 defenders, maybe fewer. That number includes old men, apprentices, mercenaries who fight for silver and not for God. Outside the city, beyond the smoke, is something that cannot be stopped once it arrives. An army so large it moves like weather. Vienna is not preparing to win. It is preparing to delay, to hurt, to survive long enough for winter to matter. The walls loom above you, medieval and naked. Tall, straight, thin stone, beautiful in peacetime, suicidal now. They were built to stop ladders and swords, not iron balls moving faster than thought. You run your hand over the stone and feel the cold already inside it, as if it knows what is coming. Men are tearing up the streets behind you, prying stones from the ground with crowbars, stacking them into crude ramparts. The city is being disassembled under your feet, reduced to raw material. Homes are stripped. Roofs come off to prevent firestorms later. Nothing is sacred anymore except the line that must not break. Smoke rolls through the gates as they are sealed shut with masonry. Not locked, buried. Once this is done, there is no leaving, no bargaining. The city becomes a closed system. Every breath counts. Every mistake compounds. You hear drums before you see the army. Not one rhythm but many, overlapping, relentless. Deep kettle drums that hit the chest like a second heartbeat. High, screaming pipes that crawl up the spine and don't let go. The sound doesn't announce itself. It occupies the air, as if it has always been there and you're only now noticing. Men on the wall stop talking. Even the mercenaries quiet down. Everyone turns toward the same horizon. They appear through the thinning smoke like a moving city. White tents bloom across the plain, spreading with geometric precision an infection of order. There are too many to count. The line of them curves around Vienna, a crescent that closes slowly, deliberately. Cavalry first, light and fast, already fanning out to burn whatever escaped the earlier fires. Behind them, infantry moving in blocks so tight they look poured into place. Discipline so clean it feels inhuman. This is not a raid. This is a migration with weapons. You realize something is wrong when you don't see the monsters you were promised. No great cannons, no bronze beasts hauled by endless oxen. There is artillery, yes. Smaller pieces dragged into position, capable of killing men but not cities. The absence is louder than the drums. Somewhere far behind, swallowed by mud and distance, the real wall breakers have been left to rust. The army has arrived late, angry and compromised, and that fact hangs in the air like a secret you're afraid to believe. On the wall, Count Salm moves with the stiffness of an old wound that never healed right. 70 years of campaigns sit in his bones. He does not look like a saviour. He looks tired and alert in the way men get when they have survived too many near endings. He doesn't waste time on speeches. He points, he orders, he counts. When the mercenaries start to mutter, he doesn't argue with them. He pays them. Not with promises, but with weight. Coins struck from his own melted silver, still warm when they hit calloused hands. You watch the tension drain from the line as the money changes possession. Loyalty for now is purchased. That is enough. The first cannon fires at dusk. The sound is not like thunder. Thunder rolls. This cracks. The ball slams into the wall and the stone answers with a scream of its own, shards flying like knives. Men duck too late. Someone goes down, clutching his face, blood pumping between fingers. Dust fills mouths and eyes. The wall holds, technically, but you can feel the impact through your boots. Each shot is a question asked of the stone. How long? The drums never stop. Sleep becomes impossible. The noise is designed for this. Shifts of musicians keep it constant, a sonic pressure that flattens thought. You lie on bare earth with your helmet over your face and feel the rhythm hammer into your ribs. When exhaustion finally drags you under, it's shallow and full of jerking dreams. You wake unsure if the sound is real or inside your skull. Then the ground begins to whisper. At first, you think it's rats. The city is full of them now, driven inward by fire and hunger. But this is different. A faint scratching, rhythmic, patient. It comes from below. Someone brings peas in a bowl and sets them on a drumhead in the cellar. You watch them. They lie still. Then slowly they begin to tremble. Miners are called, men who know darkness as a workplace. They strip down and disappear into holes cut into the earth behind the walls. You hear nothing from them for hours. Above, the cannons keep asking their questions. Below, another language is being spoken. Pick against soil, breath against dust. When the first explosion comes, it lifts you off your feet. The wall doesn't fall so much as erupt. Stone and earth punch upward, a geyser of debris that blots out the sky. The shock wave slams into your chest and empties your lungs. For a moment there is silence, the kind that follows catastrophe, thick and stunned. Then the dust clears enough for you to see the wound, a breach, jagged, sloped, an invitation made of rubble. The white caps move immediately. They don't cheer, they don't hesitate. They flow forward, boots slipping on loose stone, bodies leaning into the climb. These are the janissaries, and up close they look smaller than you expected, wrapped in cloth and discipline. Faces set into something colder than fury. They fire as they move, matchlocks flaring in the gloom, leads snapping past your ears. The first rank of defenders meets them with steel and bodies and gravity. Zweihanders swing in brutal arcs, less sword than moving wall, chopping through wood, bone, momentum. The breach becomes a choke point, then a grinder. You fight without room to think, without room to breathe. The press of bodies is constant, heat and cold and blood mixing until everything is slick. Someone screams in a language you don't understand. Someone else answers with a knife. Time collapses into effort. Push, strike, don't fall. Falling is death here. Count Salm is there impossibly, shouting hoarse orders, shoving men back into line with the flat of his sword. When he goes down, struck by flying stone or iron, you feel it ripple through the defenders like a physical blow. For a heartbeat the line wavers, then it hardens. Rage replaces fear. The men who fight for coin now fight for the body at their feet, for the fact that retreat is impossible and surrender worse. The attackers pull back as suddenly as they came, leaving the breach piled with bodies that steam in the cold air. Snow begins that night. Light at first, then heavier. By morning it sticks. You watch it settle on tents, on corpses, on the ruined ground where vineyards used to be. The drums falter. Fires sputter. The army outside starts to shrink. Not in numbers, but in spirit. You don't cheer. You can't. You're too tired, too hungry, too aware that survival, here, is not victory. It is simply not dying today. And for now, that is enough. You wake to the sound of breathing that isn't yours. It takes a second to realize it's the city itself. Thousands of lungs pulling at the same cold air, fogging it, thinning it. The snow has turned the streets into troughs of slush and blood, and every step steals heat from your feet. Leather boots are no longer protection. They are sponges. You stamp and curse and feel nothing come back. The wall is quieter today. That should scare you more than the cannons. Silence means the enemy is thinking. It means work is happening where you can't see it. Below your soles, the ground feels wrong, no longer solid but hollowed, like a drum skin stretched too tight. You kneel and press your palm to the earth. The vibration is faint but steady, a living thing burrowing closer. The miners return from the dark with eyes rimmed red and mouths grey with dust. They don't talk much. When they do, it's numbers and angles, distances measured in body lengths and breaths. They mark the floor with chalk. Here, here, and here. Counter-tunnels are cut, narrow as coffins, just wide enough for shoulders and tools. You watch them disappear again, candles bobbing like weak stars swallowed by dirt. Above ground, the defenders rot in place. Food is counted now, not eaten. Bread is hard as wood, broken with hammers, soaked in whatever liquid can be spared. Water tastes of ash and lime. Horses are slaughtered quietly at dawn, their bodies stripped before the blood can freeze. Meat is rationed by weight and rank. Nobody is full, nobody expects to be. The mercenaries stop laughing altogether. Their colours are dulled by filth and wear, feathers matted, silk torn. They still fight well, but the edge has gone from their swagger. You see them staring at the ground too often, listening. At night the drums return in bursts instead of waves. Sudden and close, then gone. Sleep fractures into useless pieces. Men jolt awake swinging at shadows. One defender tries to climb the sealed gate in the dark, sobbing, convinced he can dig his way out with his hands. They restrain him gently and then more roughly when he doesn't stop. The first underground clash happens without warning. A miner bursts up from a cellar hatch, screaming for light. He's bleeding from the forearm, the skin split to bone. Behind him comes the smell, stale air, candle smoke, something coppery and alive. You drop into the hole with 3 others, boots scraping, shoulders wedged. The tunnel narrows fast. You crawl on elbows and knees, blade clenched in teeth, candle held forward. The breach is sudden. Earth collapses inward, and you are face to face with men who did not expect you. Their eyes widen in the same instant yours do. There is no room for formation, no time to aim. You stab. Someone swings a pick and misses, sparks flying. The candle goes out. Darkness slams down like a door. Fighting in the dark is not combat, it is animal panic. Hands claw. Bodies slam. Someone bites. You feel fingers at your throat and drive your weight forward until ribs crack. A scream cuts off short. When light returns, another candle struck shaking. You see the aftermath inches from your face. Mud. Blood. A body folded wrong. You don't look long. The tunnel is collapsed and flooded on purpose. Water pours in from above, soaking powder, swallowing the enemy's work. You retreat coughing, lungs burning, knowing this will happen again somewhere else, maybe closer, maybe under your feet while you sleep. Above, the Ottomans adjust. Their artillery resumes, not to break the walls but to pin the defenders in place while the digging continues. Shots come irregularly now, spaced to keep nerves raw. Stone splinters whistle like insects. A young militiaman loses his hand to a shard and stares at the stump in confusion, as if it belongs to someone else. Snow keeps falling. It piles against tents and bodies alike, muffling sound, hiding movement. From the wall you can see the enemy camp changing shape. Fires closer together, lines tighter. Horses stand with heads low, steam rising from flanks crusted white. Men huddle, stamping, wrapping rags around hands meant for warmer wars. Still, they do not leave. Another mine goes off near the same sector as before, smaller this time, more precise. The ground jumps. A section of wall slumps but does not open. Earthworks behind it absorb the blow, just as Salm intended. The defenders cheer weakly, then stop when the drums answer. Louder, closer, triumphant. Salm himself is carried along the lines on a chair now, face drawn, voice intact. He does not promise survival. He promises work. He points to where the earth must be piled higher, where timber must be braced. He tells men where to stand until they believe him. Painkillers are gone. He feels everything and uses it to stay awake. The Ottomans send another offer. A man rides close under a white cloth shouting terms through a horn. Mercy, safety, surrender before the next assault. The words float up thin and cold. No one answers. The horn falls silent. The rider leaves. That night the slaughter outside begins. From the wall you see fires bloom inside the enemy camp. Too many, too scattered. At first you think it's chaos, then you hear the screaming. High, ragged, unmistakably civilian. Prisoners. The captives taken on the march are being culled. Assets turned, burdens turned corpses. The sound carries over the snow, over the walls, and there is nothing you can do but listen. Some men vomit. Some pray. Most just stare until their eyes ache. By morning the snow is stained black and red beyond the ditch. Smoke hangs low, clinging to the ground. The camp looks smaller now, harsher, stripped to what can move. Inside Vienna something breaks quietly. A bakery door is forced. 2 men are caught stealing flour and beaten half to death before Salm intervenes, ordering them put to work instead. Punishment wastes calories. Everything is calculus now. Energy in, energy out, morale versus muscle. You learn to think the same way. You stop remembering what food tastes like. You stop imagining after. The final preparation begins without announcement. Defenders are shifted toward the weakened sectors. Pikes are shortened for close work. Powder is dried over low fires despite the risk. Wounded men who can stand are placed in second lines. Those who cannot are given knives and told to guard doorways. The city contracts inward, a clenched fist around its last strength. On the far side of the breach you see movement at dawn that is different from before. Not probing, not digging. Mass. Lines forming deeper than usual, white caps packed tight, banners low against the snow. The drums start together, not in fragments, but as one body. The sound is heavier now, slower, deliberate. You feel it in your chest before you understand it with your mind. This is not another test. This is the attempt to end it. Men check straps, blades, each other. No speeches, no blessings, breath fogs. Hands shake and are forced still. Someone laughs once, sharp and hysterical, then stops. You take your place behind the rubble and look down at the slope that leads into the city. It is slick with ice and old blood. It is narrow. It is all that stands between inside and outside. The snow keeps falling. When the first cannon fires, all of them answer, and the day breaks apart. The assault doesn't arrive like a wave. It arrives like pressure, slow and crushing, a body leaning harder and harder until something gives. The cannons speak first, all of them at once, not to destroy but to stun. The noise hits your bones and stays there. You feel it in your teeth. Then the sound cuts out, unnaturally clean, and the drums take over, closer than they have ever been. The rhythm low and unstoppable. They come out of the smoke in blocks, white caps packed shoulder to shoulder, boots sliding but never breaking stride. You count without meaning to, 5 ranks, 10, more behind them, depth that keeps coming. This isn't a charge meant to scare. It's meant to occupy space, to suffocate. The breach takes them first. They climb over their own dead without slowing, hands grabbing stone, cloth, flesh, anything that gives purchase. The slope works against them, rubble shifting under weight, men falling and being trampled. You fire once, twice, then drop the weapon because there's no time to reload. Smoke hangs thick, stinging eyes, turning everything grey and close. You hear shouting in a language you don't know, and answer it with steel because that's all that matters now. The first impact is bodies colliding, armour scraping, breath knocked out of lungs. Pikes jab and catch and stick. Short swords come out, daggers, rocks. Someone grabs your arm and you twist. Feel tendons strain. Feel something tear. Blood splashes warm against cold skin. The smell is immediate and overwhelming. Iron, sweat, burned powder, shit. There is no room for fear. Fear requires distance. They keep coming. Behind you, men push forward to fill gaps without being told. Training and exhaustion blur together until movement is automatic. The line bends but does not break. Every inch forward the attackers gain costs them 3 bodies. 4, more. The breach fills up, a ramp of corpses that makes footing easier for those behind. You hate that it helps them. The drums don't stop. You see Count Salm again, impossibly close, carried forward in the crush on a tide of men. He's shouting, voice raw, pointing at nothing specific and everything at once. Then he's gone, swallowed by smoke and movement. A moment later there's a shout that cuts through everything else, sharp with panic. He's down. The news hits the defenders like a blow to the spine. For a heartbeat, everything wavers. You feel it. The temptation to give ground, just an inch, just to breathe. Then you see them, mercenaries, city militia, men who shouldn't be heroes, closing ranks around a fallen body. Pikes lower, swords rise. The line hardens into something ugly and immovable. Rage replaces calculation. You fight harder because stopping would mean noticing the pain. Your arm feels wrong. Your left boot fills with something warm and slippery. None of it matters. The world narrows to the space in front of you, to the next face that appears out of smoke and snow. The attackers begin to tire. You can see it in the way they swing, in the hesitation before climbing over the dead. Their robes are soaked through, heavy with mud and blood. Powder misfires in the damp. Orders get lost in the noise. Discipline frays at the edges, not enough to collapse but enough to slow. That is all you need. A counterpush surges through the defenders, wordless and desperate. Bodies lean forward together, pikes bite, shields shove. The attackers stumble, lose footing, slide back down the slope they fought so hard to climb. Some fall and don't get up. Some try to crawl and are crushed by their own men retreating. When the drums finally falter, it's almost confusing. Silence creeps in where noise lived, broken only by screams and the wet sounds of men dying slowly. Snow falls into the breach, settling on open eyes, on twisted limbs. Steam rises where blood hits ice. It's over. Not the siege, just this attempt to end it. The attackers pull back in pieces, dragging wounded when they can, leaving the rest. No cheer goes up from the walls. There's no strength left for that. Men slump where they stand, leaning on weapons, breathing like runners who went too far. Salm is carried past you on a stretcher made from shields and spears. His face is grey, lips moving without sound. His hip is shattered, bone broken in a way that cannot be fixed. You know it even if no one says it. He grips someone's sleeve as he goes by, eyes fierce, still commanding. Then he's gone into the city, and the space he leaves feels colder. The afternoon drags on, empty and tense. You expect another push. It doesn't come. Instead, you watch the enemy camp begin to fold inward, movements smaller, more cautious. Fires burn lower, men cluster around them, backs hunched. The snow thickens, turning everything white and quiet, muting even the groans from the breach. Night falls early. Inside Vienna, the cost becomes clear. Bodies line the streets near the wall, covered with whatever cloth can be spared. Wounded men fill churches and cellars, air thick with the smell of infection and fear. There is no medicine left that matters. Knives are heated. Teeth are clenched on leather. Some men don't make a sound when limbs are taken. Some don't stop screaming. You sit against a wall and finally feel your own injuries. Your arm throbs, swollen and stiff. You cut away cloth and see the gash, ugly but clean. It will heal if it doesn't rot first. You bind it tight and keep your hand moving so it doesn't lock up. Sleep comes in flashes, each one full of falling. Outside, the camp burns, not in celebration, in abandonment. Tents go up in flames, one after another, lighting the snow orange. You hear shouting, sharp and angry, then the screams start again. Louder this time, closer. The prisoners who survived the first culling are being killed now, too slow to move, too costly to keep. The sound carries cleanly in the cold night, cutting through the walls as if they aren't there. No one watches for long. Morning brings a strange, fragile calm. The drums are gone, the cannons are silent. From the wall you see columns forming, long and thin, moving away from the city like veins draining blood. They leave behind fires and bodies and the churned earth of weeks of effort. Snow fills their footprints almost immediately. You don't trust it at first. You wait for the trick, the sudden turn. It doesn't come. Slowly the truth settles in. They are leaving. There is no joy in it. The city opens its gates carefully like a wounded animal testing a limb. Scouts move out, step by cautious step, into the empty camp. They find what you expect: burned gear, dead animals, the frozen remains of men and captives alike. The scale of it is numbing. Victory, if this is what it looks like, is heavy and quiet. Back inside, bells ring because that is what bells do. People kneel because they don't know what else to do with relief. You lean against the wall and close your eyes, listening to a sound that isn't drums or screams or cannon fire. Breathing. The siege hasn't ended the war. It hasn't saved everyone. It has only bought time, paid for in blood and cold, and the body of an old man who refused to surrender. For now, Vienna still stands. The retreat doesn't feel like victory when you walk into it. It feels like aftermath, like stepping into a room where something violent happened hours ago and the air hasn't settled. The ground beyond the walls is blackened and trampled, snow churned into mud that smells of rot and burned cloth. Fires still hiss where tents collapsed inward, half-melted poles sticking up like ribs. You move carefully, because bodies are everywhere. Some lie as they fell, faces turned skyward, eyes already filmed over. Others are stacked in heaps where the cold caught them kneeling or crawling. There are animals too, horses with legs folded wrong, camels bloated and stiff, their hides split by frost and hunger. The scale of it makes counting meaningless. You stop trying. The prisoners are hardest. They are not arranged like soldiers. They are scattered, cut down where they stood, hands bound, backs turned, clothes too thin for this climate. You recognize faces from villages outside the city, people who fled inward too late or not far enough. You don't linger. There is nothing you can fix now, and staring won't make it right. Inside Vienna, the gates swing wider as confidence creeps back in cautious increments. Wagons roll out to collect the wounded and the dead. The living walk slower than they did before, as if gravity has increased. Everyone looks thinner already. Hunger doesn't end just because the enemy leaves. Count Sam does not see any of this. He lies on a pallet in a stone room that smells of damp and old prayers. His hip is wrapped tight, soaked through despite the bandages. Infection has set in, creeping and relentless. He drifts in and out, sometimes lucid, sometimes far away. When he wakes, he asks for reports and listens with the same focus he had on the wall, eyes sharp in a body that no longer obeys. He does not ask if he will live. That calculation was made the moment bone shattered. The city begins the work that comes after survival. Walls are shored up not because another assault is coming tomorrow, but because broken things invite disaster. Streets are cleared just enough to move carts. Mass graves are dug outside the walls, long trenches that steam faintly as bodies are lowered in, layer by layer. There are no markers. Names are already lost. Food distribution resumes in something like order. There is less than anyone wants, but more than yesterday. People eat in silence, saving energy, chewing slowly as if that might make the calories last longer. Children cry from habit more than hunger now, and that sound cuts deeper than cannon fire ever did. The snow keeps falling. Outside, the retreat becomes a march of attrition. You hear stories from scouts who followed at a distance, men who watched the Ottoman columns thin as they moved south, frost and disease finishing what the walls began. Equipment abandoned by the road, more dead prisoners left where they dropped. An army built for speed and summer learning too late what cold does to discipline. Inside the city there is no celebration to match those reports. People understand, even if they don't articulate it, how narrow the margin was, how much depended on weather and mud and timing. You hear it in the way conversations stop short, in the way men touch the walls as they pass, fingers tracing cracks that almost became doors. Weeks pass. The snow deepens, then crusts, then slowly begins to retreat as winter settles into something steadier and less violent. Vienna remains sealed, cautious, waiting for proof the enemy will not return with the thaw. Scouts ride farther now. Nothing comes back but silence. Sam fades. By the time spring arrives in earnest, bringing damp air and the smell of thawing earth, his body has given up the fight it carried for decades. He dies quietly, without spectacle, attended by a few officers and priests. Word spreads slowly, as if people are afraid to say it out loud. When it's finally accepted, there is a pause in the city's rhythm that feels like holding breath. He is buried with honours that feel inadequate. In the cathedral, stone and shadow swallow the sound of boots and murmured prayers. The tomb is simple, solid, practical, like the man himself. No miracles are claimed, no poetry survives him. What remains is a shape in the city, a line drawn where he decided it would be drawn. Life resumes because it must. Merchants reopen what remains of their shops. Craftsmen rebuild with salvaged timber and stone. The burned suburbs stay empty for now, black scars around the city's edge. Fields beyond them are littered with debris and bones, ploughs striking iron and stopping short. Farmers work around the dead carefully, with the detached patience of people used to loss. The walls become the focus. Engineers arrive with drawings and arguments, all of them pointing to the same truth the siege made unavoidable. Tall, thin stone belongs to another age. If Vienna is to survive the next test, it must change shape. Plans are laid for earthworks, angled bastions, thick ramparts designed to absorb impact instead of shattering under it. The city listens. It has learned the cost of not listening. You walk the perimeter often, learning it again as something that held, something that can be improved. You remember the sound of peas rattling on drumheads, the feel of the ground shifting under your boots. Those memories inform every decision now, whether people admit it or not. Far to the south and east, the retreat is rewritten. The Sultan's scribes describe the campaign as a successful chastisement, a demonstration of power carried deep into hostile land. They do not dwell on the mud or the snow or the walls that refuse to fall. They do not write about the prisoners left behind or the cannons abandoned miles away. They write for permanence, not accuracy. The people who were there know better. They carry it in their bodies, fingers that don't straighten all the way anymore, lungs that ache in cold air, scars that itch when it rains. They carry it in sleep that never quite deepens, in flinches at sudden noise. Survival has a cost that does not end when the enemy leaves. Vienna changes, not all at once. Slowly, deliberately, the way people do when they have been frightened into clarity. The ring of destruction around the city becomes a space kept clear by policy and memory, an empty zone that no one is allowed to forget the purpose of. Streets are rerouted, markets shift. The city's shape begins to reflect the siege that nearly broke it. Years later, children will play where vineyards once burned, unaware of why the ground there feels different underfoot. Adults will remember, even if they don't speak of it. They will look east on certain mornings, measuring clouds and wind without knowing why. For now, there is only rebuilding. You help where you can. Carry stone, stand watch. Learn how to live in a place that has been stripped down to function and then slowly clothed again. You notice how quiet nights are without drums, how strange it feels to sleep without expecting the ground to move. The siege does not end with a single moment. It dissolves into memory, into infrastructure, into the habits of a city that understands what it costs to remain. Vienna stands, altered and alert, waiting for a future it knows will test it again. Time does what armies cannot. It moves forward whether the ground is ready or not. Spring turns the fields outside Vienna into a mess of thawed mud and broken things. Snow retreats into ditches and shadowed corners, revealing what it hid too well. Iron fragments, shattered wagons, bones bleached pale and light. The land smells wrong for weeks, a sour mix of rot and new growth. Farmers work around it because they have to. Seeds go into the ground next to places where men froze to death months earlier. Life does not wait for dignity. Inside the city, survival hardens into routine. The walls are no longer just stone and earth. They are projects. Lines on parchment turn into trenches, then into angled slopes packed with dirt and timber. Every shovel of earth moved is a memory made physical. No one argues about the expense. The siege ended that conversation. Labour is constant. Calluses split and reform. Backs bend and straighten and bend again. You walk the city and feel the absence of what burned. Streets end where houses once stood. Empty ground rings the walls, kept clear by law now, not panic. It feels exposed, uncomfortable, but no one suggests filling it. Everyone remembers why it must stay open. The dead stop being counted individually. Mass graves settle. Earth sinks where bodies were laid too quickly, too many at once. Children are warned away from those places and obey without understanding. Dogs dig sometimes and are driven off. The city learns to live with uneven ground. Count Salm's name becomes fixed. It is spoken less often but with more weight. Not shouted, not praised. Simply used as reference, like a measurement. Before Salm. After Salm. Decisions he made are no longer debated, only extended. The man himself recedes into stone and memory. but the logic he imposed remains sharp. Outside the empire that turned back south, stories change shape. The retreat becomes a tale of discipline, of controlled withdrawal in the face of winter. Failure is buried under ceremony and language. Parades roll through distant streets. Standards are raised. The men who survived are told they were victorious enough. Many believe it because believing is easier than remembering the cold, the hunger, the screams in the night. Others do not forget. They carry Vienna with them like a bruise that never fades, a place where momentum died. They remember the walls that didn't fall, the mud that swallowed cannons, the cold that stole fingers and resolve. They do not speak of it openly, but it changes how they look west. Vienna does not celebrate its role in any grand design. People here know how accidental survival feels. Rain that lasted too long, snow that came too early, decisions made by tired men with incomplete information. Nothing about it feels inevitable. That knowledge stays close to the surface. Years pass. The city grows back into itself cautiously. New buildings rise with thicker foundations, lower profiles. Streets widen where they once choked. The soundscape changes. Hammers replace drums. Church bells ring without competition. The nights are quiet enough to hear footsteps again. Scars remain. Some are visible, mismatched stone in walls, earthworks that curve at odd angles, open ground that interrupts neighbourhoods. Others live in bodies and habits. People flinch when digging gets too close to foundations. They listen for vibrations that no longer come. Silence is never fully trusted. Children are born who never heard the siege, never smelled the smoke of their own city burning. They grow up playing on slopes shaped by artillery, learning balance on ground packed for war. Their parents watch them with an intensity that looks like fear but is really memory. The city is stronger now, but not because it believes in strength. It believes in preparation. Trade resumes along the river. Merchants move goods that smell of other places, other seasons. Vienna is part of the world again, not a sealed box rationing breath. Yet the idea of enclosure never fully leaves. Gates are watched. Approaches are measured. Distance is considered an ally. Far away, plans are made. Maps are unrolled. Lines traced. Vienna appears again. A name, a point, a promise not yet fulfilled. The memory of 1529 does not deter ambition. It reshapes it. Bigger armies are imagined, better supply. Timing adjusted. The idea of return is planted and left to grow. Vienna senses this without knowing dates or names. It lives with a low, constant awareness that what happened once can happen again. That awareness informs architecture, policy, culture. It becomes part of how the city understands itself, not as a prize, but as a threshold. You walk the walls one last time before leaving. They feel different now, thicker, smarter, built to take a hit and keep their shape. You run your hand along packed earth and timber and know what it cost to learn this. You look out over the clear ground beyond, over fields that have resumed pretending they were never battlegrounds, and you understand how thin the line is between ordinary and annihilation. There is no monument loud enough to capture that. What remains is quieter, a city that knows how to strip itself to essentials when necessary. People who understand that survival is not heroic, just relentless. Infrastructure shaped by fear that proved useful. Vienna does not claim to have saved anything abstract. It saved itself. That turns out to be enough to change the map. When travellers pass through generations later, they will admire the order, the geometry, the way the city opens and closes around its centre. They will not see the peas trembling on drumheads, the bodies piled into breaches, the snow settling on prisoners who never made it home. Those things are buried under streets and habits, but they are still there. The city carries them the way a body carries healed bone, stronger where it broke, sensitive when the weather turns, always aware of what pressure can do. Vienna stands not as a symbol, but as a result. It exists because enough people endured long enough for winter to matter, for exhaustion to compound, for a decision to retreat to become unavoidable. It exists because survival, sometimes, is simply refusing to open the gate. The world moves on around it, loud and confident, convinced of patterns and destinies. Vienna listens, measures, and keeps its ground. That is what remains after the siege, not triumph, endurance.